That's a fair assessment to make. You have one more point to make.
If you have a question, ask me. The other point which I really wanted to make, put it on the plate of this conversation is that the strikes have already taken place. The entire Iranian leadership has now distributed. Unlike the first time, if you recall, Krishna, when the news broke and first time Israelis struck Iranians, you recall the Iranians were taken by surprise because they thought that the no strike will take place before the second round of talks conclude. And what the Israelis did was, before they could realize that there would be no talks, the talks would be cancelled, they hit all of them, and all these Iranian generals died in their civilian areas, at the place of their residence. Someone was out praying, someone was having a talk with his friend, someone was having food. So they were not in their bunkers. After that, the distribution has taken place. So my point is, Krishna, that when we talk about the leadership structure in the Iranian state, it's divided into multiple parts. It's a lot of people can say it's schizophrenic in the nature, because you have a prime minister, you have the premier there, and then you have the person who is the president, and then you have the army, navy, air force, and other things, and then you have IRGC, and then you have the Quds forces, and then you have the Basij, and then you have the Ayatollahs, and then you have the Ayatollah, and it's the parallel state. So the parallel state in Iran counts more than the so-called state, which represents Iran outside. So, but for example, Basij is paramilitary plus enforcers of the wills of the Ayatollah. It's the most conservative part of the Iranian state, which enforces the rule from headscarves to everything. So right now, there is another aspect which I would like to bring on the table is, so with this strike, one thing is clear, that economic hardship of the Iranian state is not going anywhere, sir. But General, do you think this will mobilize Russia and China for the Iranian help, or do you think that they are likely to stay away? Sometimes important powers don't get into other people's business. Like, for example, sir, if I would just like to quote, when Brijesh Mishra was deployed in Beijing, Indians were able to decipher the chit chat which the Chinese premier had with Brijesh Mishra then. And the assessment was that the Chinese are not going to get into the 1971. So what is your assessment, sir? Do you think that the Russians and the Chinese are going to get into the great game, or they're going to get their attention remain focused on the so-called their prize, Taiwan and Ukraine?
Well, firstly, I think there's some problem with the audio. I could pick up a sense of your questions. Two things I think you basically raised. One was the structure, the structure that Iranian has. Of course, their political structure and their military structure. Political structure is basically driven by the supreme leader, and the rest are only carrying out what are the higher directions by the supreme leader. So he is the person who actually is at the helm, and it is he decides the strategic dimension, and the military dimensions are decided in two ways. One is conventional forces, and one are the Quds type of forces which actually undertake the proxy operations or the covert operations. The second point is, yes, Iran is going to feel the heat further because they already are under sanctions. The economy is very fragile. Now, these two important players, that's what Iran is actually banking upon, that is Russia and China. Ironically, in my article also, I said that the kind of support they were looking from these two allies have not come through. And there are reasons for this. Firstly, Russian own hands are full in Ukraine, and they can actually do very little. And apparently, Trump is very sympathetic to Putin. So there's some kind of quid pro quo that we'll leave you alone in Ukraine, but you don't turn toward West Asia. I feel there could be some understanding to that extent. So the Russian involvement would be only, I think, more political. I don't even think how militarily they can help Iran. Secondly, the Chinese. Chinese are very, I would say, very smart players. And as I said, I served in China for 3 years as a defense attaché, follow them very closely. You see how they have set up the complete game. They have three major opponents. One is America, second is Russia, and third on the fringes like India, Japan, and others. Point is today America is involved in indirectly in Ukraine. After all, they are keeping the fight sustained, and now they are involved in Israel. I mean, West Asia. The Russians as is involved in Ukraine. So Chinese are watching the game very comfortably. What they will do is they will send the military supplies, the military arsenal. You know how overnight they could send PL-15 missiles to Pakistan, which changed the complex of Ops Sindoor. So they are quite capable of supplying these arms and ammunition. And secondly, there is a fair amount of give and take between North Korea and Iran and Pakistan. As I said, I have seen it very closely. So even North Koreans will be able to send their very potent missile like Hwasong and Taipotung. All the missiles are very capable. And Hwasong incidentally has a range of about 40,000 kilometers. So Iranians need the capability to actually threaten America. And after what is the weapon in hand of Kim Jong-un, who was the supreme leader of North Korea, are the Hwasong missiles and the nuclear capability. So point I'm trying to make is Russian help is very minimal, more political, more vocal, more symbolic. But the Chinese would step in as far as revamping the arsenal of Iran because they have about 3,000 missiles and they must have fired about one third. So they also are very tight on their arsenal. So I think Chinese would step in both monetarily and also through the armament. And Chinese have a very clear understanding, checkbook diplomacy. They will take out their pound of flesh once the things settle down. Kartikeya and Krishna.
As continue staying with us as we continue to bring the latest details, news breaking. First evacuation flight of Indians from Israel has been cancelled. The escalation in the conflict, in the West Asia conflict, leading to the cancellation of the flight. The first evacuation flight of Indians from Israel, which has been cancelled. Bear in mind, the evacuation of Indians from Iran continues. Over 110 Indians have been evacuated from Iran. But now, those Indians who need to be evacuated from Israel, their evacuation flight has been cancelled. The first evacuation flight from Israel has been cancelled. That's the latest news that's breaking here. As we continue to bring you the latest details on this seismic movement in the West Asia conflict, the US bombing 3 nuclear sites. Visuals on the screens are the latest visuals of the strikes of the US. The US striking Isfahan, Fordo and Natanz nuclear facilities. Heavy ammunition and weaponry involved in these strikes, changing the rules of the game. Nuclear facilities getting demolished. Kartikeya Sharma, our Deputy Managing Editor, continues to be with us. Kartikeya, these visuals tell you the levels of the strike, isn't it? You've been telling us, the weaponry that have been used, is
Yes.
not the usual weaponry, and it shows in these visuals the sound and the fury of these strikes.